Hello, welcome back. My name is Dr. Christopher Gennari, and this is Great Big History Podcast, History 101, Episode 15, Egypt and the Middle Kingdom, Pharaohs, Ducks, and Mesopotamian Pirates. So when we left off, the first intermediate period had come to a close. The princes of Thebes, with their African mercenaries and their money from African trade, had been able to overwhelm the nobility of Middle and Lower Egypt, creating a unified Egypt again from the first cataract to the delta. And that's the Middle Kingdom. Now, they didn't know they were in the Middle Kingdom at the time, but we call it that now. And it lasts around from 1900 to 1600 BC. It doesn't have an army. Like the Old Kingdom, it's not going to have an army. It's not going to be invaded. The princes of Thebes are going to send their mercenaries home, pay them. Thank you. If we need you again, we'll be sure to call. And they go, great. We're going back home. We're going to go fight with our African kings and help them get rich, and we'll get rich, and everybody will be happy. And, you might keep a little small police force just to kind of keep the nobility in line, like an enlarged bodyguard type of thing, a couple thousand troops, but we're not talking an army. We're not talking something that can invade other countries or fight major wars. Egypt is still at peace, surrounded by the deserts. Well, what about the pyramids? Are we going to build pyramids again? Old Kingdom did. We need legitimacy. The fundamentals haven't changed. Except, no, we are not going to build pyramids. Why? Well, pyramids worked for 500 years. Pyramids worked. They totally worked for legitimacy until they didn't work anymore. And so it was time. The Middle Kingdom looked and said, they're too expensive. It didn't work for them. We got the first intermediate period because pyramids didn't work. They stopped working. Well, when your car works, that's great, and you use it. When it stops working, you don't say, well, let's keep the car. No, you go, let's try something new. And so the Middle Kingdom is not going to have pyramids. So what is it going to have? One is infrastructure. Remember the job Pharaoh has. Pharaoh has the job of two things. Stability, which is still fairly easy because of the deserts, but also having conquered Egypt and made it unified, he's achieved that. Now, we just need stability and peace. So the Middle Kingdom is kind of doing that. The other is economic prosperity. The Old Kingdom did that with the Nile flooding plus pyramids. So the Nile flooding is still happening. So that's good. So the Middle Kingdom is going to add to it infrastructure. We're going to make life easier. Because what do farmers need more of? They need more water. They need more canals to bring water to them from the Nile. They need more ways of getting to market. They need more markets to sell their goods. They need more storage for their goods. So they don't have to worry about their food rotting. They could sell it. It could be stored. It can move through the markets better. So we get a series of kings that invest in making economic life better. Senusret III dredges the upper Nile, so the river will flow better. Right? Remember, we have the cataracts? We're going to try to make them less harmful to economic trade. So that allows better trade with Africa. Amenhotep III is going to set up mines in the Sinai. Mines are your mineral wealth, your gold, your silver, your stuff for your tools. Copper, tin. That means, one, if it's gold and silver, you have money, which means you need less tax. You need to collect less taxes. Or two, if it's copper or tin, which become bronze, you need to buy less from like the Hittites, from the Phoenicians, which means you can keep more money at home. which allows you to lower taxes. So you set up mines in the Sinai. That's good for everybody. It means more money is flowing, better tools are flowing, and you're doing it at less cost. But here's the problem with infrastructure. Nobody cares. People like it when it's built. It's very helpful. It's great for the economy, but nobody cares. Like, we live in Philly. We live across the river from Philly in Camden County, right? We've got two major bridges, the Ben Franklin Bridge, the Walt Whitman Bridge, that get us to Philly. Do you care which political party built those bridges back in the day? When the Walt Whitman Bridge went up in the 60s, do you care that it was Democrats? No, you don't care. You're voting today and you're not going, oh, you know what? The Democrats built the Walt Whitman Bridge. I really like that. It helps me get to work and then get to school, and it makes my life better. So I'm going to vote for them. No. We had an infrastructure bill under Obama. Nobody cared. They saw the roads being fixed. Down here, they had to put up signs. This money is being brought to you by, Donald Norcross and Barack Obama. Because nobody cared. They went, there's traffic. They're ripping up the roads. They didn't know where that money came from, why that money was coming in, how they were expanding 130. Nobody cared. At the moment, it was an inconvenience. How about the Jersey Turnpike? It's now 4 lanes. There's no traffic anymore going up and back to New York. It's great. Do you care that money came from Obama? No. Or Democrats? No. Do you even know? No. You don't care. And so infrastructure doesn't help you. It may help you in the moment, immediately, but it's not the pyramids that last 20 years. It's just not, no one cares. There wasn't a road, now there's a road. That's great, I'll use the road. You don't care which pharaoh built it. And so there needs to be something else other than just infrastructure. And what the Middle Kingdom will come up with is culture. A cultural creation. They will center on influencers. Basically, if you're a YouTuber or Instagram person, that's the language we're going to use now. This is the first version of this lecture. I'm using that. But that's who they would hire. Poets, playwrights. The idea was to spread tales of how awesome Pharaoh is. So you get the story of Sinuhe. You get regularized writing. Well, what is Egyptian? What does it look like? How do you write it? How is it different from cuneiform? How is it different from hieroglyphics? Right? You get the widespread use of papyrus, because if you're going to write more, you need something to write on. But you get pouring money into poets and playwrights, the circus, and tales of greatness. Now, why? Well, because there's not much going on in rural Egypt in 1825 BCE. And then the circus comes to town, and they build a stage in the middle of town. And who wants to go? Everybody wants to go. And you have barkers, and you have markets, and you have all of these players, and you have acrobats, and you have animals that you've never seen. And they build a stage, and it's free. It's, of course, free. And everyone comes, and they sit down, and the leader of the circus comes out and says, hello, we're the Pharaoh players, and tonight's entertainment, this weekend's entertainment, is brought to you by a generous donation from Pharaoh. Now, the teamsters, all the oxen that carried the goods, right? All the teamsters that were in charge of boxing everything up, all the handymen, all the workers who are going to build the stage, all the wood, right? All the actors, all the acrobats, all the writers who had to write the scripts, right? They're all being paid by Pharaoh. So what is their story always going to be about? Pharaoh is awesome. Pharaoh is going to help the young couple get together. See Robin Hood. That's how Robin Hood ends. Remember, Robin Hood ends with Maid Marian and Robin Hood getting married by King Richard. King Richard comes back from Crusades and says, you two should get married. I will marry you. And that's how it ends. Right? That's how Pharaoh's going to end. The two lovers are gonna love each other in the beginning, then pirates are going to show up, or bad things are going to happen, and maybe they won't end up together, and then after an hour, they end up together, and Pharaoh is the one who brings them together, right? Pharaoh is the one who's going to save the ducks from the flood. They were swimming down here, and now they're swimming up here, and Pharaoh is the one who said, that is too high for ducks to swim. I will save them, and did. They are all about how awesome Pharaoh is. So when you leave, what do? You talk about, hey, Pharaoh's a pretty good guy. Did you know how good Pharaoh is? And your little kids are like, I'm going to be Pharaoh when I grow up. And they'll take out little fake swords and they'll pretend to be Luke Skywalker. No. They'll pretend to be Luke Pharaoh. Ha. You're bad. You're Darth Pharaoh and I'm Luke Pharaoh. And you'll do like we kids did back in the 70s. Where you played the character after the movie. Like how many of you did that with Neo when you watched the first Matrix? Or now we're in the age of Cobra Kai. How many? I mean, I remember all the people who took karate classes in 1985. After they saw the movie and went, Mom, I want to take karate classes. That was awesome. I'm going to be the new Karate Kid. Wah, ha, 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 hoo, wah, ha, ha, ha. You're like, and that lasted till 1992 when everyone decided to be Kurt Cobain and wear flannel all the time. So what's the advantage of this? The advantage is it's cheap. It's cheap. Playwrights are cheap. Shakespeare tells us they're a penny a dozen. They're nothing. Poets, think about what your job could be. You could be a farmer, or you could be paid to write stories. Which would you pick? You're going to be paid to write stories. So lots of people want to do this. It's cheap. Us graduate students, to write our dissertations, we pay the school to do it, to get the doctorate. We literally have to pay the school to go $100,000 into debt to write a book. That's the craziest thing I ever participated in. The advantage is it's cheap. The playwrights, compared to a pyramid, plays and a circus is nothing. And you could have multiple ones going on, all roaming around Egypt, telling stories. It's cheap. Infrastructure is relatively cheap. Why? Because it makes you money. You spend $1 trillion on infrastructure, on a road, right? Not road, but highways. Think about it, right? You used to not be able to get from Philly to AC. Then they built the Atlantic City Expressway, and it made it a lot easier. That helped Atlantic City grow. Made it easier to get to. The Garden State Parkway is the same way. Get you from New York to AC. Sure, could you take Route 1 and the Black Horse Pike? And sure. But a lot of people went, I just don't want to do that. And every time someone said, I don't want to do that, that's money lost. So you build a highway, you make money. It costs money, but it's an investment. So even the advantages, even the things like infrastructure that are expensive, make you money, so they're cheap. And playwrights and poets and circuses are definitely cheap. And everybody likes you. What's the disadvantage? The disadvantage is you have no control over the message, over how people hear those stories, right? The first disadvantage with infrastructure is people don't care. They don't think about it that long. They can't remember a time when the road wasn't there. So they don't think about it. The problem with cultural creation is you can't guarantee what you want them to hear is what they will hear. And you know this. You're on Facebook. You're on Instagram. Have you ever got into a fight with someone over text or WhatsApp or Snap when you said something and someone took it, quote, the wrong way? It happens all the time. Right? Teachers are fired in the South. Why? Because they post a picture of themselves drinking a glass of wine. This has literally happened. And what happened? Some of their students found that photo and they told their parents, and their parents said, I don't want some drunk teaching my 8-year-old. It's like, it's a glass of wine during dinner. Like, everybody does it. In Europe, you have 8-year-olds drinking glasses of wine. But it's America, and so they fire the teachers. Because like, well, you set a bad moral example by having wine with dinner. And posting it on, because the parents who saw it saw an alcoholic. They saw what they wanted to see. So this happens all the time. Right? So here, I will give you a story. Did you hear the story about the Pharaoh who spent $1 billion helping orphans? Now, if you are an Egyptian, what part of that story did you hear? Pharaoh spent $1 billion helping orphans. Which part of that story did you hear? If you're an Egyptian, you heard helping orphans. You did not hear the $1 billion. Why? Because Pharaoh's rich. Egypt is rich. You don't care about the $1 billion. You care about helping orphans. Only if that number was tiny. Pharaoh spent 8 cents helping orphans. Would you go care about the money? Like, it's a big number. Great. Pharaoh has it. What is he using it for? Is he building a pleasure palace? No, he's helping orphans. Pharaoh's great. I love Pharaoh. He spent $1 billion to help orphans. That's amazing. Pharaoh is wonderful. What a nice guy. But what if you hear that same story? Pharaoh spent $1 billion helping orphans. And you happen to be Mesopotamian pirates. What part of that story did you hear? Did you hear helping orphans? Oh, isn't Pharaoh nice? He helped orphans. Or, as a Mesopotamian pirate who lives in a tough neighborhood full of war and death and destruction, did you hear $1 billion? Do you see? It's the same story, yet two different groups hear two different things. Oh, I'll tell you a different story. The people of Egypt love Pharaoh so much, he doesn't even need an army. He's got no troops. None. Doesn't have an army at all. No chariots, no horses, no spearmen, because his people love him. Well, if you're an Egyptian, you're like, yeah, of course we love him. That's great. Or her. Remember, women can be Pharaoh too. Pharaoh is a non-gendered name. You know? But if you're a Mesopotamian pirate who has war chariots, you just heard, Pharaoh has $1 billion to help orphans, which means he's got money because no one spends all of their money helping orphans or doing anything. And he has no army. And so the disadvantage is you cannot, once you tell that story, you cannot control it. And what happened to the Middle Kingdom is the stories about how awesome Pharaoh were got out. They left Egypt because people told them. They're like, oh, telling Phoenicians, oh, Pharaoh's so great, he doesn't even have an army. He doesn't need an army. And that Phoenician went back to Phoenicia and told Phoenicians, oh, did you hear the story about Pharaoh? He doesn't even have an army. And that story went and changed here and there. But eventually it hits Mesopotamian Canaanite pirates who hear easy freaking money. And that's the Hyksos. The Hyksos are Mesopotamian warrior pirates that crossed the Sinai. We don't know how they did it. They must have had a navy. So the thought is maybe they were Canaanites. There's even a thought that maybe they were early Hebrews. They wouldn't really have been Hebrews yet, but they were people who will become the Hebrews. And so there's this argument that they're part of this Canaanite group that will be remembered as the slaves in Egypt, but because the new kingdom will eventually defeat them, that kind of thing, but we'll get there. But They needed a Phoenician navy. They had to have water to get across the Sinai Desert, so they had to have had a Phoenician navy. So maybe they were Phoenicians. Like, we don't know who the Hyksos are. The only time they appear in history is as warrior pirate Vikings, and they cross the Sinai, invade Lower Egypt, enter into the Delta, and wreck stuff like pirates are going to do. The Pharaoh, of course, marches down. He gets his homeboys together, marches down to go fight them, kick them out because, well, this is new, but we have to defend Egypt. He gets killed in battle. The Middle Kingdom ends. Lower Egypt is looted. The second intermediate period begins, and Egypt is traumatized. The Middle Kingdom ends in blood and war, in death. The death of the Pharaoh, the death of the Middle Kingdom, the breakup of Egypt. The Hyksos don't take over all of Egypt. They just take over Lower Egypt. They take over the Delta region. The second intermediate period starts where Egyptian noblemen who are left all have to decide, who's the next pharaoh? What are we going to do? What are we going to do? Why did this happen? How do we prevent it from happening? Egypt is traumatized. It had never been invaded before, and now it had been invaded, and the Middle Kingdom has ended. And when we pick up in our next episode, we'll talk about what happens. Thank you.